What is going down, NBA fans? How are we out there? Hope everybody's enjoying all the NBA action. You know, according to ratings are up. More people are watching this year than the past couple of years, and internationally they're up as well. So seems like we got a lot of eyes on basketball, and by and large, the games have been pretty excellent. Today's game plan is to talk about all four series that are going on right now. We'll start with the games that transpired last night. And the first one being the Hawks and the Sixers. Going into last night's games, I was kind of curious. I'm watching all of this and had the thought of, is defense as important, given the prolific nature of offenses these days, as it's always been? Historically speaking, you need to be a top 10 defense to have a shot in these playoffs. And, you know, the Sixers, as close as that score looked after game one, it really wasn't. The Hawks had that game. The Sixers made a furious comeback in the fourth to close the gap, but that was the Hawks game. And then you look at the Bucks, an excellent defensive team, and they're just getting smoked. The Clippers had no real answer for Luka in a lot of ways in the opening round. And would that continue? The Lakers were the number one team defense, and they couldn't stop the guard play of the Suns or the three-point shooting of the Suns in the previous round. And that was number one in team defense without LeBron and AD, and for large stretches. They end the season as the number one team defense. So that is an ethos that is baked into the DNA of all the different players. And so I'm watching these games going, so when these offenses have become so high powered, come playoffs, does defense even matter? I mean, obviously it does, but to the degree where you have to have a stout defense if you want to have any shot in this, because the game slows down, jumpers go cold, and if you can get a stop on the defensive side, it'll make all the difference in the world. And I'm looking at you, Bucks. You're the ones that really sparked this in my mind. And I'll say this much, man. Watching that Atlanta Sixers game last night, boy, that Sixers defense was tenacious. I like that they were getting some Ben Simmons on Trae Young. Occasionally, Thibault would go out there on Trae Young. Still had some Danny Green matchups who got torched in the first game. But, I mean, there was several defensive sequences last night where you're like, there was a great one. I think, Embiid hit the shot and then ran down and got this gorgeous block just both ways. Everybody was playing both ways, back and forth and back and forth. And Embiid, Doc Rivers was quoted as saying he was there when David Robinson got the MVP and Elijah went out and destroyed him because of it. And last night he felt that maybe Embiid had some of that essence with him. And he went out. I mean, Embiid had a good game. This was turning into the Shake Milton game, man. He came in and gave them the offensive punch that they so desperately needed. Because Ben Simmons didn't fill up the stat sheet. And Danny Green was here in the Boo Birds in Philly, which is unsurprising. It's Philadelphia. But Curry had a good game. Tobias Harris had a good game. Embiid had a monster 40-point game and looked great. Those 2 threes that he hit were nice in rhythm. As someone pointed out online, Embiid with a tear in his meniscus has now played more minutes than Giannis. Although game 2 and that Bucks Nets starters were pulled, and there's a lot of garbage time minutes, too many actually, for this Bucks team. But that's the thing. Like, it's easy to react or overreact rather to game one. You see a game one, you're like, that's it. That's the series right there. It's all over. You got to see how teams adjust on both sides, the winners and the losers, but primarily the losers of game one, to see, okay, here are the actions that they ran. How can we counteract that? How can we game plan to be more efficient? And the Sixers came out and did that. They made nice adjustments. Their defense, their intensity was really excellent. As close as that final score was, Sixers had control the whole game. In no way did I feel like they were going to lose that. Even when Atlanta narrowed it somewhat, in the second half, I still didn't believe that they had the juice in them, especially when, Collins does not have a good game and Capella does not have a good game. And I love that Capella and Embiid are trash talking. And apparently, according to Capella, they're trash talking in French to one another. That's fun. I like that. I was curious as to whether or not Trey would continue his villain of the playoffs approach and amp it up for the Philly crowd as well. But perhaps that's just MSG brings it out of you. It's the basketball mecca. So you want to kind of be known there as the villain. And I don't blame him for that. To the chat, Ramon says, good morning, everybody. Daniel Savo says the same. And Jeremy Bauer says the show needs to be twice a week. I am legitimately watching every game. I have only missed the Sunday games because back-to-back weeks on Sunday, I had to be down in San Diego. So I listened to them on the drive as best I could. Those are the only games I've missed. So hypothetically, yes, could easily go to a 2-week. It's more so a matter of fitting it in my schedule. Kind of hectic as of late when I'm not recording this. I got other stuff going on for right now. But anyway, neither here nor there. Back to the game. So the adjustments that each team has to make, and so game 3, the chess match continues because Atlanta can score. So they still got good games. Is bad, and they weren't awful, but as bad a games as you got from Capella and Collins. Herder still looked good. Trey still looked good. Bogdanovich looked good. So they got solid performances from other guys. It's when you have those guys going off and you get a Collins and potentially a Capella, one of those two, or some combination of 4 or 5, that's when it becomes a real problem for everybody. So, I liked the lineups last night where they were going full defense, where you have Simmons and Thibault, Embiid, Tobias, and Danny Green. Just like, okay, we got so much length out here that go ahead and try and score. Go ahead. What you want to shoot 3? We're going to contest it. You want to drive to the rim? You're going to run into a wall of bodies. Thibault got hit with a couple ticky-tack fouls, and Trey was hunting him. Like there was that one at the top of the key where he, I can't remember if it was against Thibault, but he jumped into him to shoot a 3. And in no way was it a natural shooting motion. It was purely, I'm pretty sure that I can get the ref to bite on this. And he had one, the quintessential Trey Young, I'm using my off arm, and then I managed to get a foul when I do a floater roughly from the free throw line type of thing, which I hope the NBA has just talked about legislating that out in the offseason. I really hope they do. That's not the game. That's foul hunting, and that's not fun to watch. Unless you're a Hawks fan. And even then, I think you would be honest. If you're an honest individual, I think you could truthfully say it's not good basketball, but it's good for the Hawks, so I'm all in favor of it. So I will be intrigued as to what adjustments the Hawks make coming into the next game. Because, it's really just a difference. My guess is for them, we hit a couple more of our shots, we're right back in this. Plus, if Shake Milton doesn't go off, I love that heat check 3 that he had that clanged off the back of the rim. As soon as he shot it, you're just like, heat check. There's no reason in the world you should be shooting this. He was top right wing and like 3 steps behind the 3-point line. and no real rebounders down there. His offense wasn't set around him and was just jacking it because it's like, you know what? I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it. And that's where there's so the fallacy of the hot hand is a belief within math that it's BS. Just because a person's hot doesn't mean they're going to make more shots. And, the statistical analysis up until recently agreed with that. And then new researchers took data into account of the degree of difficulty of shots of guys that get hot. And the degree of difficulty goes up because they just start feeling it. And they're like, fuck it, I'm jacking from 37 right here. That rim looks massive. And once you take that into account, there is a hot hand. Guys, when you have that confidence and you're feeling it, there is a statistical bump in what you're going to make. So when Shake is going to shoot that, it's just like, all right, how hot is his hand? And it didn't look good. His shooting motion when he rose up, you're like, his form doesn't look strong, but right now he is making everything and he's playing with all the confidence in the world. So you got to give him the benefit of the doubt, but watching it in real time was like, I don't know about that one. And it clanged out, but if they don't have that punch from Shake Milton, I'm not sure where this game lands because Atlanta was, crawling back into this, closing the gap. We're making it an honest game. And that was the spark that Philly needed, especially when Simmons, he made some great passes. He was playing excellent defense, just tenacious. It may not show up in the stat sheet. It's not like he had 6 blocks and 4 steals, but he was all over guys and was suffocating along with a lot of the other Philly players. And it's those little things that you don't see in the stat sheets. He had some really gorgeous assists, just a super crisp pass. That one to Thibault where he got the and one after just a great defensive sequence, like 2 blocks on Trae Young. They grab the rebound. George Hill does, I believe, and then tosses it to Simmons. He runs up and Thibault cuts in through traffic and Simmons hits him perfectly in stride, goes up, gets the and one. Simmons was finding guys in their spots and whatnot. But without Shake Milton, if Simmons is going to be kind of, a no-show and Danny Green's not having the best game, this could have been a lot closer. This could have ended up being Atlanta taking game 2 and now having a 2-0 lead, which would have been shocking to me. I think this is, an interesting series. But I can't wait for game 3. It's going to be a boatload of fun because I think these two teams are fairly well matched, which should make for an interesting series. I favored Philly coming in, but if Embiid tweaks his knee a little bit more and now has to sit, suddenly Atlanta's looking pretty deep and pretty good. They've got a shot to make the Eastern Conference Finals. Do I think they can make the finals? I mean, never say never, but it's pretty slim, in my opinion. You still have to take on the winner of Nets Bucks, and by that I mean you still have to take on the Nets. And right now they're playing basketball kind of otherworldly. So, all right. Well, looking forward to game 3 on that one. Let's move on to the other game last night, which was a fantastic game. The Jazz versus the Clippers. And what a game. I mean, Donovan Mitchell, 45 points, shot beautifully from the field. What do you go? 16 to 30 overall, 6 of 15 from 3, shot well at the line, got to the line a nice amount. When you don't have Conley out there, he strained his, I want to say, right hamstring. So he's sitting, and that then nullifies a nice action that they run, which is pick and roll with Gobert. It's like, pick your poison between Conley and Gobert. And it's one of the things that Gobert is most effective at on the offensive side. It's just rolling to the rim. And now you have to stop this massive human being from getting an easy dunk. So you take that out of the equation and you're going to get more minutes for Derek Favors in there. Joe Ingles was put into the starting lineup. And, Mitchell started off the first half cold and just came alive in the second. And the real difference, like into the first half, the difference was the Clippers were hitting their threes, the Jazz were not. That's about it. I mean, I've got the first half stats. So the Clippers shot 20 of 42 overall for 47.6% and 11 of 23 from three for 47.8%. And the Jazz shot 17 of 53 overall for 32%. And then from three, they were 7 of 27 for 25.9%. So 27 shots. And the score was Clippers up by 13. Now, they made 4 more threes. So there's 12 points right there. So 3-point shooting was the difference in the first half because all the other statistical metrics at that point were roughly even. I think the Jazz had like a 1 or 2 rebound advantage. Assists were relatively close. The defensive stats were relatively close. Fouls and free throws, I think, slightly favored the Clippers, but it wasn't some egregious difference between the two. So it came down to 3-point shooting. And in the second half, they remedied that. But there were some interesting no calls last night. That tip out by Kawhi late in the game that then they awarded to the Clippers. He was on the up near midcourt-ish, just a little bit in, and ball went up, and it was, I can't remember who he was fighting with, but it definitely touched him last, and they awarded the Clippers the ball. And then there was also that one where Kawhi jumps up with the ball and Gobert was there and comes back down with it, drops it, and then picks it back up. And the refs bought into the Gobert touched it. So that's why he dropped it. And he went back up and got an easy 2, which cut the lead to 3 at that point. And you see these calls going the Clippers' way, and you're like, I think they might be able to pull this out. I think this might be it. And the Jazz just kept hitting shots. I mean, that block by Gobert at the end was a thing of beauty. Morris catches it in the corner, right? Starts to set. Gobert is running over it, jumps in the air. Morris sees it. Takes 1 step to his right, and Gobert lands and manages to get a second jump in time. And as Morris is going up for that shot, Gobert blocks it. And I mean, the spring in his step was really impressive. The Clippers, especially in that first half, like Batum is hitting threes. And the Clippers are up by 13, and they're getting subpar performances from Paul George and Kawhi. If you take away free throws, Paul George cracked 20 points. He had 21, I want to say. You take away his free throws, Paul George had a piss poor day. And now he's like, I saw a stat put on because he shot under 25%. And now he's number 3 all time for most playoff performances where a guy has 15 plus attempts and shoots under 25%. It's the 3rd most all time in the playoffs, I believe. And he is up and down. Even if the Clippers advance, I'm not sure what you do with him in the offseason. Because it's feast or famine. Like Kawhi didn't have a good game either. He wasn't shooting the ball particularly well. Neither of the two were. And the fact that the Clippers were in this is really impressive. They got a couple nice minutes from Boogie. Luke Kennard. I thought watching it, I was like, okay, so the first game was almost the Shake Milton game. Is this going to be the Luke Kennard game? Is Montrezl Harrell just sitting at home being like, fuck you, man. Clippers chose you over me. Bunch of bullshit. And just watching him was like, is this going to be the Luke Kennard game? Luke Kennard kept them, gave them a nice offensive punch off the bench. And, so Kawhi and PG not having the best game. And the Clippers, especially in the first half, Clippers are up. Doesn't matter. Batum's hitting these threes. Other guys are making their shots. Luke Kennard is dropping in buckets, and the Jazz don't. If they're going to miss, this is the fault of the Jazz. If they're not going to make their outside shots, they're not going to have much of a chance in this. You only have Mitchell, Clarkson, and Conley, really. They can do any playmaking and get to the rim. And of that, you really only trust Donovan to do it like consistently to play make. Clarkson is, when he's feeling it, and he's going to be tough to stop. But there are also nights when he's cold. And Conley kind of, he's a floor general. He's one of the last few that if he needs to look for a shot, he'll look for a shot. Otherwise, he's going to try and get guys involved. There aren't too many of those left in the game right now. So if they're not hitting their threes, it's like, well, this is going to be a long night for the Jazz. And I thought I had in the last series about the Clippers, Reggie Jackson. What is he? One more armor piece away from being A-Train in season 3 of the boys? I mean, how much crap can you wear on a court? It's just so weird. He's got a left arm sleeve, keeps the right one, his shooting arm free. That's the only spot. He's got the leggings on underneath. He's wearing specs. He's got a mouthpiece in. He's got a bandana. It's like, dude, how much armor do you need to go out there and play basketball? But anyway, neither here nor there. Yeah, so now, but it's, you don't want to overreact. And if you're the Clippers, it's like, we only lost by 3 and our 2 best players did not have good games. Did we play so poorly? And you can say, well, no, you didn't actually. I mean, if you subtract Luke Kennard, yes. You weren't anticipating getting those, but at the same time, it's the playoffs. And if you have any aspirations to championship, random guys do need to step up for you throughout the playoffs. Look at the Lakers last year. They got KCP finally emerged as to a steady individual. Alex Caruso would spark the team every once and again, and they just get good play from role players and random games here and there, and that was the extra little oomph they needed to get him over for that game. So if I'm the Clippers, I'm walking out of this going, listen, it's only game 1. We also just got off a best-of-7 series, so we're not fully, rested like they are, which sometimes can work against whoever has that first game or who has the longest off. It's like they almost look a shade rusty having such an amount of time off. And in the first half, the Jazz might be a testament to that. But if I'm the Clippers walking out only having lost by 3, my 2 best players did not have good games, at least percentage-wise shooting. They got to the line and whatnot and did what they could elsewhere. But we had a shot in this. Could have stolen game 1. It's not so bad. It's not so bad. That's why you can't overreact to a game 1. You see a game 1, which we'll get to the next Bucks next, and you're like, oh, I wonder, is it, a lot of people be like, that's it, it's over, and you're like, that's these both, every one of these teams left is a good team. Some are fighting through more injuries, so looking at you, Denver, they're fighting through injuries, but they're still a solid team. There's a reason why they made the playoffs and they made it through the first round. They have somewhat of a title contention at this point. So if I'm the Clippers, I'm looking at this going, this isn't the end of the world. We can make the adjustments. Their threes were cold, so maybe we just bull rush them a little bit more on threes and force them to go inside to Gobert and platoon some bigs in there and let Zubac and Morris or anyone else just take on the threes, or take on the fouls rather as much as they can. I mean, I think the Clippers are definitely missing Serge because he could extend the floor and force Ibaka out of the paint, thereby opening up the driving lanes for Kawhi, PG, Reggie Jackson, etc. To have a floor spacing 5 out there just to reduce how much of a menace that Gobert is, because that's why, Kawhi, for Christ's sakes, on that what should have been a travel when he jumped up and down underneath the rim because Gobert was there. That's the type of presence that Gobert, just him being in the vicinity makes you think twice about shooting it. I can't even fathom what that's like to go up against a dude that is that huge and that athletically gifted. It's got to be a scary proposition. And then when you factor in these other guys that are going up against him are wildly athletic, the best in their profession, and they're still intimidated by the Stifle Tower. So if you had a stretch 5 out there, or potentially, you could try and force Utah into like some sort of small ball thing, but I think Gobert is going to stay out there regardless. They have their 5-6 guys, and then when you need a Derek Favors, he comes in. They probably have if Conley's back, they have 7-8 guys. But Gobert, unless he gets into foul trouble, which he almost could have been, good coach's challenge by Quinn Snyder. Gobert would have had to sit early when he got called for a 4th, and Snyder challenged the call and they overturned it and kept him at 3. And that's kind of huge because taking him off the chessboard is massive at that point. If you have nobody on the interior that's going to be that kind of looming presence, then suddenly Clippers are hitting from outside. Well, now they have a free lane to get inside, and it's going to make them all the more difficult to stop. But yeah, if I'm the Clippers, I am not disheartened by the fact that I lost game 1. Look, you were down to the Mavs 2-0 and gutted out a win there in that series. Only lost this one by 3. You took their best punch. Now, will you be able to get up off the mat? Game 2 is going to be super interesting. I can't wait for it. Let's move on to the most lopsided series, which is Nets Bucks. Going into this, I'm on text threads for the NBA playoffs with all kinds of different people, just talking, guests that have been on the show, others that, other friends that haven't, and just like, are you watching this game? This is incredible. Did you just see that? Holy shit, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And, coming into the playoffs, I was like, listen, the Nets are going to be a tough out, but I really like the way Milwaukee is playing. And I like them for all these weird things. The fact that they weren't number 1, I really like that. Because they had been number 1 and faltered. Now, maybe they're a little bit hungrier at 3, They're not going to have that home court. They're still an excellent team. They're playing beautifully on both sides of the ball. And once again, you don't want to overreact to that game 1. And when people ask me, the point of that was going into it, I was like, listen, as I've said now for the past, I think, a couple weeks on the show, 2, 3, maybe 4 weeks, whoever wins this series takes the East, and I think has a damn good shot of winning it all. But I thought I slightly favored it. So if anybody asked me, I would say it's 51 to 49 percentage wise. I favor the Bucks. For this reason, it's like, okay, I put Drew Holiday on James Harden. I put some combination of Giannis and PJ Tucker on Kevin Durant. And then I just say, hey, Kyrie, go ahead and cook. Go ahead. We've seen enough examples where when you give Kyrie the reins, his teams don't raise their level along with him for whatever reason it is. Look at those Nets teams before Durant was healthy last year, or the Celtics teams previous to that, or Cavs before LeBron got there, although he was younger. So in the talent surrounding him was suboptimal. We'll say that. But the Celtics and then that Nets team the season before he got there, they were solid, man. They played for each other. That was an interesting, fun dynamic team. And then Kyrie gets there, and they were better whenever he was hurt or sitting. So in my mind, I was like, all right, if Drew can slow down, you're never going to nullify James Harden. But if you can slow him down, and maybe potentially, if you're so pesky, get into his head a little bit and he takes himself out mentally, that's a huge win. Durant, you're never going to stop. Once again, if you can slow him down and make it difficult for him to get all the plethora of shots that he's accustomed to getting, that's a huge win. And then just go, Kyrie, go ahead and cook, and we'll go single coverage on Joe Harris and Blake Griffin and not worry about it. Now, losing Dante DiVincenzo, I mean, on paper, it's not the biggest thing, but the guys play heavy minutes for him. And when he sits, or now he's out for the season, now you got to play big minutes of Bryn Forbes, who's not known for his defense. And if he's not hitting from three, I'm not entirely sure what his utility is. Or Jeff Teague. Just like I've seen enough Jeff Teague over the years to know that that's not exactly the best case scenario for you. So losing I thought Connaughton would get more minutes too, to be perfectly honest. But DiVincenzo just gave them an intensity that I think they're somewhat lacking right now. But anyway, coming into it, I was like, all right, 51-49. But I was also choosing that because everybody else was picking the Nets. And I understand, because part of me was like, you're being an idiot. You should just favor. They have Durant, but Durant only played a handful of games coming back. Like, this team hadn't played all three together. And it seems strange that they're going to try and coalesce through the playoffs. So the fact that Bucks have been doing it together all season long, and the Nets are trying to put it all together right now, I am going to lean Bucks ever so slightly, 51-49. And if you want, I can show you the text receipts of me saying 51-49. So the first game happens. And once again, you can't overreact to a first game. It's like, oh, okay, well, Harden goes down early on, but maybe the Nets players are playing with, we got to do this for him, and just a lot of confidence and whatnot. So game two, the adjustment from the Bucks, this is going to be interesting. How exactly, what matchups and changes are they going to make? And game two happens, and it's like, it doesn't matter. It does not matter. I mean, Chris Middleton, unfortunately, is doing Chris Middleton things in the playoffs, that is, which is disappearing. And then Drew Holiday right now looks like a marginal upgrade over Drew Bledsoe. Or not Drew Bledsoe, Eric Bledsoe. That's not good for the Bucks. Drew all season has just been this incredible defender who then can play make and takes some of the pressure off of Giannis and Middleton to be able to have to do everything. Just like, oh, here's another guy that can get you a three or drive to the lane. Like, it's a good decision maker, plays with a lot of intensity, gives you a defensive identity. And he played like the guy that we all knew that he was all season long. And right now, through these first two games, I mean, it's not over. It is not over. As we saw, the Clippers just came back from a 2-0 deficit. It's entirely possible. But Kevin Durant is trying to basically reestablish himself as the best basketball player in the world. And if he continues playing the way that he does, because he's also bringing a defensive intensity as well, it's, he's got a great argument for it. I mean, think about how well the Bucks are playing right now. And James Harden, former MVP, guy who's ended up in the top three, a ridiculous number of times over the past 6 years, is not even playing for him. And it doesn't even seem to matter. I mean, Blake Griffin, where in the world did this come from? If you watched him on Detroit, he just looked washed, man. Just straight up washed. Now, it could be a case where what does he have to play for? It's Detroit. They have no real championship aspirations. The team is a collection of, parts that aren't exactly a perfect blend of, what you would want within a team construct. It was like sit around and watch Jeremy Grant cook type of situation. And good for Jeremy Grant, but at the same time, that team was going nowhere. So maybe he just didn't have the motivation. And, that putback dunk, he doesn't have quite the hops that he used to, but given the number of knee surgeries and other injuries that he's had, still looked pretty damn good. Hit some open threes, and then you factor in you can't leave Joe Harris open from three. You just can't. And now suddenly you've got those two in addition to Kyrie and KD just putting on masterful performances. And if the Bucks can't match in the slightest, if Middleton is going to just no-show and Drew is going to play like Bledsoe, the Bucks have no chance. And it becomes what in the world did they do in the offseason? Because they have this team. Giannis signs that extension. They've got Drew locked. They've got Middleton. I've got to see how long Middleton's contract runs and Lopez, but I'm pretty sure they're all coming back next season. And between the four of them, that's most of your salary cap. So I don't know what differences they can make around the margins if they can't make this an honest series. I think you'd have to potentially have to think about letting Budenholzer go. I mean, if you subtract the garbage time minutes, I still don't feel like Giannis is playing enough. He's playing more than what Coach Bud did in previous playoff runs. But still, if Durant is going to play 40, Giannis needs to play 40. That you need to match those minutes. You're asking your guys, basically worst case, from here on, there are 19 games left in the season. If you're a Bucks fan, that's if this series goes 7, the next series goes 7, and the series after that goes 7. You got 19 games. I need you to play damn near every minute of those 19 games. That's all there is. You got to push. There's 19 games left. Hypothetically, there's as few as 12 games left. Some variation within there, but I need you out there playing as much as humanly possible. Now, if Middleton turns around and starts hitting his shots, it's a different outlook for them in game 3. But I will be glued to my television to see if that happens, because as good as Durant, Kyrie, Joe Harris, and Griffin are playing right now, and then you have Brown and James playing with all the confidence in the world. Claxton subs in, and suddenly you got just a spring in his step defender that is willing to patrol the paint, does not mind if a guy tries and dunks on him because he will defend. They're an interesting mix of guys. I wonder if DeAndre Jordan is ever going to touch the floor in these playoffs. Even in that blowout game, didn't see the floor. Just ridiculous. Let's go over to the chat real quick. So Jake Cleveland says, do you think the Jazz having near full attendance is an advantage? Yeah. Yeah, I do. I mean, they were chanting overrated to Paul George in the game last night. So long as Jazz fans don't take it a step too far, which they have a history of doing, treat the other players with respect, but do the Knicks game 2 Trey is balding, which is a lot of fun. And I love that Knicks fans are back, and hopefully this is a trend that continues. Although I'm not sure what you do with Julius Randle, because they could extend him in the offseason. And sorry, I need to blow my nose. Allergies are kicking up here in Los Angeles. with Randall, maybe it's just a function of first real taste of the playoffs, and we can work on where you got stymied in this series and figure out, one or two moves that we can work on religiously over the offseason so that when it happens, it's kind of like when with Portland early in their playoff runs and Dame would get trapped up, like he crosses half court and two defenders are running up, and it was an effective defensive scheme against him early on in his career because he would get occasionally flustered, whatnot, potentially turn the ball over, make a bad pass, whatever the case was. And then he worked on schemes to get out of those double teams. No longer does he face that because he's effectively worked on the skills to nullify a defense scheming for that. Another problem with the Bucks is the free throw shooting. I mean, it's a liability right now to have Giannis out there, much like Ben Simmons when Atlanta reverted to Hack-a-Ben for a minute there in last night's game. I mean, I know that there were stories in the offseason where Giannis worked on his free throws and was doing it like with trainers. And if he missed, however, like say he was shooting 100, and if he missed 10 or something, his wife had to run, I think, with their child, and he had to watch. And like that was supposed to be motivation for him to not do it, to work on his stroke. I mean, between that and watching Giannis brick threes, I know that he needs to shoot them. You do. Even your worst shooters in today's modern NBA, you need to shoot the three to keep the defense honest so it doesn't collapse down and just clog the paint. You need to keep the passing lanes and driving lanes open. But boy, oh boy, there are some, especially early in the shot clock, where his defender is rightly sagging and just daring him to shoot, and he takes the shot instead of taking that shot in the flow of the offense. But the free throws, man, it's going to be a huge problem. Especially when you've got Durant, Kyrie, and Joe Harris on the other end, and then Harden coming back. It's like there's four guys right there that are pretty much 90% from the line. And when you got Giannis, who's going to shoot 50, 55, on a good day, 65, and he has a tendency to get foul calls and go to the line, those are missed opportunities every time. It's, the lack of formal shot technique is something that he has worked on. He's gotten better over in time. But if the other guys aren't hitting outside shots, if Chris Middleton is cold like that, then just clog the paint and it nullifies Giannis's effectiveness. Now you're forcing him to do those one-legged spin fadeaways, which aren't his forte. He could build up to it. You see Embiid do it, although Embiid's got a better touch, much better free throw shooter. He can build in time, but I mean, that free throw thing, that is a huge, monumental disadvantage. I'd have to look it up, what he shot in these first two games, but I know it's not good. It ain't pretty. But yeah, I think the attendance, like Philly last night, that was huge. Huge. MSG in the previous round, that was huge. Any area that's allowed to get to near max, if not max capacity, it's, for some of these guys, they've never been in the playoffs with a huge crowd before. What if the playoffs last year were their first taste of it and it's dead quiet and it's basically just like playing in a practice gym? Be curious to know if that had any effect. It would have had any effect really on the Heat if they, a lot of people are going to point to the quick turnaround of 71 days between the end of last offseason and the start of this season. I think it definitely did have some effect, especially on the older players, but like the Heat are by and large a young team. Although they were nothing until, not nothing, but they were a shell themselves until Jimmy got back. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But that free throw disparity between Milwaukee, their percentage versus the Nets, coupled with if two of their four are going off, they're going to be a tough out for any team left. And the Nets are playing solid defense too. They're a lot of fun to watch. But I do think, this could be a problem for the NBA. Just these super teams coming together. And then suddenly, if you build organically, you don't really have a shot because one team has 2 former MVPs and another guy who hypothetically could win one at one point. He's got the skill set for it. And then you add in, former All-NBA and All-Star Blake Griffin, who most people thought were washed. I mean, think about them had LaMarcus not had the heart troubles. It's like, okay, now suddenly they have LaMarcus Aldridge on this team as well. It's whether it's a change in the buyout market, so that can't happen, or I don't know, some sort of machination within the league. I don't want to stop players from wanting to play together, but when you stack a team like this, it's like, what's the incentive for these others that are trying to build from the draft and stuff? It's like, we did all this time, all this careful planning, and we got lucky in the draft, and we've got, like Memphis. We got lucky in the draft. We got Ja. Once Jaren Jackson comes back, and if he looks healthy again, we also did well with Dylan Brooks. And we fill around it with young guys, potentially like a good veteran, but no marquee guy by and large is going to go to Memphis. And it's just like, they're building. And then suddenly it's like, oh yeah, well, Team Y in LA, or if Vegas ever gets a team or whatever the case is, they just in the off season and through one player sulking got traded to their team, and they have 3 of the top 10 to 15 players on their squad out of nowhere. And your years of planning and drafting, player development, the vision of the ownership, GM, and coaches, all is flushed down the drain because this other glitzy team managed to lure the marquee talent. So anyway, but the Nets are super fun to watch. So just as a basketball fan, I do enjoy that. And then the last series we'll get to, and then we'll close out today, which is the Suns and the Nuggets. Once again, game 1, can't overreact. But I think, now's when we're finally seeing that the injuries are catching up with the Nuggets because they can't match the guard play. Campazzo rather. He's good. He's good. Do you want to rely on him? I don't know about that. Austin Rivers, he's good. I don't want to rely on him. Not having Barton and not having Jamal Murray. Now they're having, suboptimal guard play and against a team that is stacked at guard. Then couple that with the fact that Ayton played Jokic, the NBA's, brand spanking new MVP, to a draw. It's like, well, if Ayton has the ability to do that, and we'll see in game 2, I think that's asking a lot of Ayton to do it consistently over the course of. We assume he's going to get beaten by Jokic more often than not in this series. Could be wrong by the end of it, but there is a reason he's the MVP. And he would have, if I had a vote, he would have gotten my vote this year. And I love that fan vote that Derrick Rose got 1 vote, first place. And it came from, I guess, the collective fans, which I didn't know fans had a vote like that, where the overall winner of the fan vote got 1 MVP vote. I can't believe that escaped me, but good for Derrick Rose, man. I'm so happy to see him contributing to a team at a high level like that. And I hope that he stays and continues to do that for New York, and they embrace him and love him as much as I do as a Bulls fan. I will forever be a Derrick Rose fan. But anyway, Ayton playing Jokic to a draw seems kind of anomalous. Not to say that Ayton has been really good through the playoffs, and it tamping down that how could you have passed on Doncic and even potentially Trae Young? And now it looks like Marvin Bagley is the only one of those top guys that isn't going to pan out, because Ayton has kind of nose to the grindstone, and he's just worked on the little things here and there, and he's gotten better defensively. His footwork has gotten crisper. So if you can play the MVP to a draw, and let's say it goes 7 games. If you're able to do that in 4 or potentially 5 of those games, then Phoenix is winning this series, because Denver can't match the guard play. When you got CP3 out there and Devin Booker, but then you couple in or fold in, however you want to say it, the Bridges and Cam Johnsons, and like the depth that they have, Campaign coming in and playing better minutes than I ever genuinely thought Campaign could play. I've watched a lot of Campaign over the years, and never understood exactly, why this guy was in the league. He seemed like a 12th man. And now when you watch him play, it's like he's got an edge, he's got a toughness, and that's coming in off the bench. And now the Chris Paul's been in and out of the lineup with that shoulder thing, to know that you have somewhat of a steady influence in Campaign, a guy that can get your offense into the sets that you need to run. Now, not as efficiently as Chris Paul, and he's not going to be able to dissect the defense and probe and do all those little Chris Paul things where, he had a couple gorgeous moves in that first game. There was one where he ended up dribbling into the interior, the left side of the paint, and he was kind of like dancing around, and kind of shimmied around 3 different defenders, and then found the open gap, and then just shot this little bunny from 6-7 feet. And it was just a thing of beauty. You're watching an old man look around, keep his head on a swivel, and just kind of dribble, probe, and penetrate, and then find the weakness within the defense whenever they sagged off ever so slightly. It was just enough room for him to get the shot. That's the difference of one of the best point guards in my lifetime versus a solid replacement in Campaign. And I think Campaign would agree to that as well. It's like, I'm not Chris Paul. And there's no shame in that. Chris Paul's fantastic. Go look at his assist to turnover ratio. That tells you how good he is. Guy finds open men all the time and rarely, if ever, gives the ball up. And that's huge. That's exactly what you want in a point guard. But the guard play for Phoenix is so top tier that you're asking a tremendous amount from guys that should be running with second units, not playing starters minutes and going up against all-stars. So this is going to be a tough one for the Nuggets. Coming into it, I liked Phoenix. After one game, I still like Phoenix. I think the Nuggets can get a game or two, but I think Phoenix takes this overall. In all the series, I'll give you a quick. So Utah leads the Clippers 1-0. I think this one goes 7. And if the Jazz lose, it's because, like the first half last night, they shot poorly from 3. They just shoot such a high volume from 3 overall that they live and die by it. But they have enough guys that shoot well. But I think I slightly favor the Jazz. But I think that's a 7. If the Clippers win in 7, I would not be surprised. Denver, Phoenix, I think Phoenix takes it in 5 or 6. Milwaukee and the Bucks. Milwaukee and Brooklyn. Who doesn't take Brooklyn at this point? They're up 2-0. I think they take it just like against Boston. They go 4-1. They do not sweep. They take off a game. Milwaukee looks good. They win this 4-1. I hope I'm eating crow on that. I mean, it's nothing against Brooklyn, but I would like to see pretty much every other team left outside of the Clippers, but even the Clippers, a lot of what they have is from the draft. But pretty much everybody else they built these teams from the ground up as opposed to a super team put together. So I would rather see a ground up team because then it gives hope to the league as a whole. It's like, see this? You don't have to get LeBron James and Anthony Davis. You don't have to get Kevin Durant, James Harden, Kyrie Irving, Blake Griffin, LaMarcus before he left to have a shot at winning this. You can build in the draft and get lucky and make like Milwaukee did one acquisition in Drew Holiday and Lopez previously, but anybody could add Lopez when they got him. Or Atlanta. That is all Atlanta building. And then in the offseason, they go out and get Bogdanovich and Gallinari. But that's them building it on their own. Philly, pretty much, same thing. Make a trade for Seth Curry. Pick up Danny Green. But drafted Simmons, drafted Thibault, drafted Embiid. A lot of, drafted Shake Milton, drafted Tyrese Maxey. Traded for Tobias Harris, but still, preponderance of individuals they drafted. Denver, same thing. Phoenix, same thing. Utah, same thing. So I would prefer the more organic champion. And Jake Cleveland makes a great point. CP3's leadership works much better for these younger players. I agree. They needed a steady hand to guide them through this, and this is the, a prime team for him to stamp his identity on. And some people think that Monty Williams lost the coach of the year because people view this as Chris Paul's team first, whereas the Knicks are viewed as Tom Thibodeau's team first, or Thibodeau, actually. It's pronounced Thibodeau, by the way. I still say Tibbs and Thibodeau because he didn't correct anybody for a fucking decade. And then we all got used to saying Thibodeau, and it's actually Thibodeau. And just tell us how your name is pronounced so we don't continuously screw it up. I've known people like that and be like, I don't really care. And she's like, it's your name, man. I'm happy to call you by the proper pronunciation of your name, Thibs. But yeah, I don't know that other teams, like if they had more veteran leadership, unless they were already friends with Chris Paul, they might bristle at his, floor generalship and his demands and demeanor. But for this young team that hadn't been there before, it's precisely what they needed, was just that steady leadership that he provides to them. All right, well, that's it for today. We're at an hour. I think we've talked enough hoops for one day. I hope you guys enjoy this next week of action. Hypothetically, one of the series could be over by the time I next see you, but I doubt it. I don't think so. We should be in the midst of interesting games 5s and 6s, but we shall see. We shall see. All right, so that is it for today's Drop In Dimes. You can follow me anywhere at Matt Knost. Thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in. To everybody that joined me in the chat, I appreciate it once again. For those just viewing that didn't want to join in the chat, hey, no worries. I'm a longtime lurker on a few different sites, so I understand that entirely. Sometimes you just got it on in the background and you're at work or whatnot, and you can't exactly interact. I totally get it. Not a problem. I thank you for tuning in. All right, I will see you guys next week with another brand new edition of Dropping Dimes. And if you want to watch, if you're listening to this, I go live at noon Pacific Standard Time, 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time every week at Wednesdays. So yeah, tune in. You can go to youtube.com/Dropping Dimes, and you can find the live feed over there and join all the people that are here week in, week out. So that is it. Stay safe out there. Get the vaccine if you can, please. And if it's hopefully it's becoming available in your country if you haven't gotten it yet and you get it sometime soon. Stay safe out there. Wear your masks. I continue to wear mine even though I'm vaccinated just because. Hopefully it keeps everybody else up. We're not to herd immunity yet, so might as well try and stay safe. So please wash those hands, stay 6 feet apart, do everything you can. We will get through this in the end. I'll see you guys next week for another edition of Dropping Dimes. Until then, adios.